Every step from the Wonder Barn felt like it might easily be my last. I wanted so badly to turn around and see my mother, the fake mother, who had embraced me and told me how proud she was of me. Brother Thomas had been right. It was a devious trap, and I would never escape from it if I went back. This cold, quiet village was realer than anything I would find in there. If I wanted to find my mother, I would have to go where she was, and the softly glowing church near the back of the field seemed like a great place to start. I moved cautiously between the dark buildings, the windows looking down on me like unhappy old men. I could just imagine faces looking down from those windows, or worse still, the doors swinging open and hooded figures coming out with hatchets and sickles and pitchforks. If they were watching me walk down the evenly cobbled street, however, they were content to watch. I was unaccosted as I made my way towards the church, and when something squalled like a cat to my left, it made me feel like my skin might leap off and take flight. It turned out to be a playground, the merry-go-round moving slightly in the breeze. There were 2 slides, a jungle gym, a merry-go-round that had nearly caused me to soil myself, and some swings that were also moving in small, lazy arcs in the wind. For some reason, it looked so desolate amongst these Puritan dwellings, and the sight of it made me even more nervous than the houses. Did children actually play here? It seemed hard to believe that a community like this had children, but I suppose they must. Might I have played here if my mother had been successful in my abduction? I didn't know, but I decided to move on before I could think about it too much. The playground was at the edge of a wood fence, and the fence held in a field of what appeared to be corn. The stalks had been picked clean this time of year, and the skeletal remnants moved in the wind like ghostly wind chimes. I heard the corn husks scuttle across the ground as the breeze blew them, and the sound sent mouse feet across my spine. There was a little pathway leading to the church, and as I took my first step down the path, I saw that I had been wrong. Half the field was corn, but the other half was wheat. I knew that the farm had animals too, at least they had on the show. They had cows, chickens, ducks, pigs, sheep, even a few turkeys. The turkeys had been on a seasonal episode, and they had kind of freaked me out as a kid. They had people names, all of them, and they seemed to have strangely shaped faces too, like people wearing masks. As I moved down the rows, I heard a noise in the corn, and it froze me in place. It didn't sound like a wind through the corn, not this time. This time it sounded like someone running through the stalks, and I couldn't find the source. I would catch the sway of the husks from the corner of my eye, but I wouldn't see anything when I turned to look. I made my feet move, made myself walk the path, and it seemed to follow me as I went. Was it one of the farm people? Was it something worse? Maybe even something that had gotten loose from the barn? I didn't know, but I made myself walk slowly and confidently up the row. Everyone said that you couldn't let things know when you were afraid of them. If they knew you were afraid, it just made them much more likely to chase you. I didn't feel much like being chased, and as I came out of the corn, the runner didn't follow me, and I breathed a sigh of relief. The closer I got, the clearer I could hear the people inside the church. They were chanting in a language I didn't know, but I found I could understand. It was something guttural, something old, something utterly unpleasant. They were chanting to the bright, calling to it, beseeching it, and the light inside the chapel began to brighten and darken, brighten and darken. It was blinking faster as their fervor increased, the chanting rising and falling in time with the blinking, and the two seemed to be in symbiosis with each other. I set my hand upon the pole handle, but I couldn't find the strength to pull. The chanting rolled over me like a wave, and all the hope I had expected to find here was absent. I don't know what I had been thinking. I don't know what I had expected to find, but I had clearly been led astray. No, I knew what I had been thinking, and as I threw open the door to the chapel, the chanting stopped, but the light did not. It was like staring into the sun, like leaning down to look at a light bulb as it sits in the lamp, but about 1,000,000 times brighter. It didn't hurt my eyes the way I had expected it would, but I could feel them watering as the tears slid down my face. It was beautiful, this orb of untold brutality, and as I gazed at it, my head felt hot at the center, like the worst sunburn imaginable. The heat of it was undescribable, but that didn't hurt either. It cooked my flesh, but it just made me feel clean instead of burnt. What came next isn't going to make a lot of sense, but I'll try. The light seemed to move towards me, and the light entered me. It moved into my eyes, my ears, my mouth. It went between my toes and the webbing of my fingers. It moved into my belly button, my hair, into my more intimate areas, and it filled me with light. It felt right. It felt good, but just as fast it was gone again. It must have found something in me wanting, because it left me then, and then the light in the church burned down to the size of a bonfire as it returned to the altar at the front. Once it had gone down a little, I could see the congregants that I had missed before. The church, as it turned out, was full. There were about 40 people, all of them dressed in old-timey clothes, and it looked like an assembly of Mennonites. They were all staring at me like I might sprout a second head, and when someone from the front of the church cleared their throat, I shifted my gaze. Those 3 were dressed differently, their robes white with yellow trim, and their heads were crowned with these weird yellow circles that made them look like miniature suns. The 2 men on either side were nondescript, bald with beards, but the woman by the altar took my breath away. It was her. It was my mother. She looked like a dark mirror of the woman that I had seen in the Wonder Barn. Her corn silk hair was wild, frizzed around her skull like a kind of sloppy afro. She was pale, like someone who had never seen the sun, and her body was thin and emaciated. Her face was drawn, the flesh around her skull tight and intense, and when she saw me, I could detect nothing, none of the love that I had found from the mother in the barn. Her eyes were wet and frantic, the shining eyes of the zealot. "Brothers and sisters, it seems the Bright has decided to bless us this day. We have been sent, a believer, blood of my blood, and I wish to bring her into the fold myself. Come, angel, come and be with the Bright." I took a few steps inside. I couldn't help it. I wanted to be with her. I wanted to see her, but her words hit me like a steamroller. Come be with the Bright, not with her. She had invited me into her cult, not to be a part of her life. I remembered the words of the Not Mother in the Wonder Barn and stopped. "Angel?" she asked, her words full of distrust as opposed to concern. Come to the light, child. Come be part of the bright." "Of the bright," the crowd intoned. This was what Thomas had been talking about, and he had been right. She was no mother, just another mouthpiece for whatever she had signed up with. She hadn't cared about me. That much was obvious, and I wondered how I could have been so blind. I'd been caught up in the mystery, in the mysticism, and now I had fallen into the trap that my grandmother and my father had been afraid that I would stumble into. I hadn't thought of my dad in a while, not since undertaking this, and I wondered suddenly how he would feel about me being here. He'd probably die of worry all over again. "Come, now," my mother said, and there was more growl in her voice than normal speech. Come to the bright," they chanted, and the bonfire over the altar began to wink. "No," I said. I half whispered, taking a step back. As the crowd began to stand behind me, I realized my mistake. "What?" my mother hissed, almost incredulously. "I said no," I repeated, taking another step for the door. "This was a mistake. I see that now. I don't want to be a part of this. I'll be leaving now. You can keep whatever family this is that you made for yourself. I'll be going." But they had blocked me in. "You misunderstand," my mother said, her face growing even more crazed. "I wasn't asking whether you wanted to come to the bright or not. I was telling you to come, and so you will. The bright will judge you worthy or unworthy, and you will be burned clean, or you will be burned to ash." The crowd began to push me forward, their bodies forming a physical wall between me and the door. I tried to break through them, but they were unmoving. They never touched me. I suppose I was unclean until the bright decided I was worthy. They did, however, bump into me and block my way as they slowly walked forward, closing the gap between me and my mother. She stood grinning behind the altar like some manic bride waiting for her betrothed, and I began screaming and shoving at the assembled people as they closed ranks behind me. This was not happening. This was not how this was supposed to go. In all my dreams of finding my mother and being reunited, this had never been what I had expected. It was crying and yelling and punching and kicking and at the men and the women who were moving me closer to that crazed woman. But if they felt any of it, they never showed. I was trapped, powerless, and it seemed I was going to be judged by the bright, whether I wanted to be or not. Or so I thought. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and I saw what had been stalking me through the corn. It was the grinning tar creature, the one that had led me here, and its smile seemed all the wider now. In the light of that miniature sun, its skin seemed to ooze and melt before my very eyes, and when the people turned to see it, they screamed and began to scatter. It sniffed the air, its eyeless face scanning the room, before it fixed them on the small sun by the altar and focused itself on it. It got down on all fours and ran like a dog, brushing past me before I could get my wits about me, and made a beeline for the altar. My mother's voice was as fervent as it was terrified. "Stop it! Don't let it get near the bright! Stop it! Stop that creature!" I was running before it collided with the ball of light, seeing my escape and taking it. But as I came through the door, I was hit from behind by a hot gust of desert wind. It lifted me off my feet and threw me into the air, pushing my filthy feet out before dropping me again. I came down in the corn, luckily, and lay there trying to collect myself as my eardrums refused to register anything but a high-pitched whine. I don't know exactly how long I lay there, smelling dirt and trying to get my head to stop spinning. But as sound returned, I heard people moaning and groaning and screaming all around me. I tried to stand up, my head spun, and I lay right back down in the corn again. It took a while, but when I was able to get up without falling down, I glanced back at the chapel and saw people in similar states. The church was gone, and what remained looked like a bomb had gone off. None of the people seemed to be hurt, just disoriented, but the building had taken the brunt of whatever had happened. I stumbled out of the corn, holding my head and trying to get my bearings, when I heard my mother's voice raised in anger. I turned to find her standing in the remains of the church, her dress in tatters and her hair burnt down to a crisp. "Get her! Get her! She did this! I want her brought to me now!" I didn't think about it, and I certainly didn't wait for her congregants to get back on their feet. I pointed myself towards the spooky collection of houses, and I ran. You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.